Distinguished guests, in particular Mr. Wolf, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the Hanze University of Applied Sciences for the inauguration of Gary Wolf as visiting professor appointed to the professorship New Business and IT. Some 20 years ago, Gary Wolf was interviewed about his work at Wijk Digital. And he talked about the possibilities of the so-called ambient media. Mind you, this was before most of us had access to the internet, even at home or probably at work. And it was way before the introduction of the smartphones. And in that interview, Mr. Wolf talks about the possible use of screensavers and wallpapers for ambient media. And technology has evolved since then with an uncompromising pace, so much that just talking about these digital remnants feels anachronistic. But echoing the early days of the internet is not the reason I bring up that interview. There is another point I want to make, and I'll do that by quoting Gary himself. Start of quote: "In every neighborhood there is a kid that you can count on to go down the biggest hill on its bicycle first." End of quote. Mr. Wolf believed Wijk played the role of that kid in the industries in the 90s. And I believe much the same can be said for his role spreading the word about quantified self. And I think this role can hardly be underestimated. Gary Wolf is the co-founder of Quantified Self. It's a movement and a collaboration among users and makers of self-tracking tools, exploring self-knowledge through numbers. Self-tracking tools have strongly improved over the last couple of years, and mostly because of technological advancements. Think of smaller and better sensors, the rise of the smartphone, cloud storage, and the shifting perspective on personal data. What can be tracked and measured also seems limitless. Exercise, sleep, food, mood, productivity, and even sex and spiritual well-being can be measured. Seeing this list, it's hard to imagine to think about something that cannot be tracked. But what is the use of all this self-tracking? What does all this data about how we eat, sleep, love, and so on tell us about ourselves? And how does it help us to reflect on who we are and how can we give it meaning? The data we collect about ourselves helps us to look at ourselves in a new way, and it might tell us things about ourselves we didn't yet realize, and it helps us ask questions we wouldn't have asked otherwise. And I have an example for you later on. Mr. Wolf once boldly pointed out that, and I quote again, "The dominant forms of self-exploration assume that the road to knowledge lies through words. Trackers are exploring an alternative route. Instead of interrogating their inner world through talking and writing, they are using numbers. They are constructing a quantified self." End of quote. This quantified self is not a completely new ego, it's not a new me, but it helps us put ourselves in perspective and challenge our assumptions about ourselves, based on data instead of language. But I'm sure this is something Mr. Wolf can explain much better than I can. Nevertheless, I'd like to give you one personal example. Yesterday I went to the concert of Bruce Springsteen in The Hague, and at the end of the evening my Fitbit told me that I made 12,000 steps. None of my friends ever saw me as a dancer, but something happened there. A new me based on data instead of language. And I realize it's a small step for mankind, but it was a big step for me. For the remainder of my speech, I would like to focus on the partnership between Mr. Wolf and the Hanze University of Applied Sciences. First, let me elaborate shortly on our educational vision. This vision stems from what we consider our societal mandate. We want to educate students for professional practice and to support the development as independent, critical and responsible individuals. And society also asks us to transform scientific knowledge into practical applications. And we heed this call by combining teaching, researching and professional practice within a learning community. And we strive to be a university where inquisitive students, inspiring researcher lecturers and committed partners from the professional field strengthen and learn from each other. And we also realize that we can only educate innovative professionals if we ourselves are innovative. So how does this relate to the Quantified Self activities? In 2012, the Quantified Self Institute was founded at Hanze University of Applied Sciences in close collaboration with QS Labs in San Francisco. The Institute has a specific goal to realize a bridge between the academic community and the QS movement. The mission statement is to improve a healthy lifestyle by combining technology, science, and don't forget fun. The interesting and innovative thing with QS is that it somewhat defies the laws of traditional research. It's non-traditional in many ways because it's participatory and community-based. Research is self-initiated, data are self-collected, and it's a single-subject research with a population of 1. And at first this seems to diverge from the vision above, in which we strive to bring people together to work on applied research. With QS it looks like everybody is just researching themselves, and perhaps they are. But this doesn't mean there is no learning community. Just like a mosaic is the art of creating an image with the assemblage of small pieces of colored materials, the Quantified Self movement has the art of improving collective health and well-being by assembling the results of all these individuals in research projects. It's not just about the individual experiences. The QS learning community also needs to address the overarching elements, the meta questions. What can be learned from the methods? How can discoveries from single subject and self-initiated research project follow? How can we support self-learning communities? And how can we establish consensus about the legitimacy of this type of research? Many issues that are encountered in QS learning community touch other subjects, such as ethics, quality of data, validity, new business models, implication for health and well-being, etc. And these questions are not easy to answer, but they are what makes this professorship so exciting. To a large extent it's a dive into the unknown, but the results can have impact on many different fields. The involvement and active participation of students enables them to think differently about research, research method, the inclusion of technology, and helps them to be innovative. Quantified self-research here at the Hanze, especially with a figurehead like Gary, can be that kid that goes down the biggest hill the first, calling on and inspiring others to follow. And I'll come to an end. Self-exploration, self-discovery, self-knowledge through numbers could truly constitute a paradigm shift from the philosophy of the self we have known since Socrates' maxim, know yourself, based on reflection on the self through dialogue, through language. And this is an exciting thought, and it's why we are thrilled to welcome you, Gary, as a visiting professor to our institute. We are proud and delighted to inaugurate you as a visiting professor. Your pioneering work, your vision and your personality are of great value to our research and our institution. And I warmly welcome you to the institution and wish you all the best with your work in total and with Hanze in particular. It's great to have you here.